It was interesting doing Torchwood recently, which we're now turned into a thriller with 3 writers. So we all had to work together on a continuous story. So we all sat in a room. It's the first time I've done that, but a thriller sort of thing. And anyway, to invent new characters that came along. And I was going, right, there's a boy called Stephen, and this happens to him. And the other 2 writers were going, how did you just make his name up like that? And it's like, I was going, well, what's his name? It's like, and they obviously go through a process of sitting there, you know, no one's right or no one's wrong. They go through a process of sitting there going, oh, is he Arthur? Is he Albert? Is he Stephen? Is he Jake? What fits? And I just hit it. The moment I think of them, there's the name. Otherwise they don't exist, really.
When you're writing dialogue, do you hear it in your head? Do you speak it aloud, or...?
What happens to me is I have a scene heading, so, you know, it's interior, wine bar, day. I have put the characters in there, and if I've done the work on the characters and I know who they are as people, I put them in there and take that little thing and I put it in my head, and they start talking to each other, and I write down what they say, so I absolutely hear it. And it is sometimes I can't type, because I only type with one finger. I'm doing that, I don't know why, I only type with one finger.
Really?
One finger, and I'm quick though. I am the quickest finger in the West. I am literally like that. But I can do...
That's crazy.
I can do 20,000 words a minute. It's like Superman.
What I do is I act out the characters on the page. I think it's sort of like being an actor in your own head.
In a way, it doesn't feel like proper writing somehow. It's different, and it's like you are sort of playing and messing around, and yeah, it's
channeling.
It's a bit channeling, yeah.
That was a wanky term I just used.
It's a psychic term, isn't it?
Now and again, I see it typed up like ticker tape, and you go, oh my God, that's a good line. Like I've just been given it from somewhere else. I mean, from someone else. And yeah, and it's always better than the one I would have thought of first.
What do you think differentiates good dialogue from bad dialogue?
You know, the easiest way to explain it, I guess, is write your sentence, whatever that is, all right? So it's 2 guys outside a pub, they come out, they're going in opposite directions, and the dialogue is, great having a drink with you, really enjoyed it, great game of darts, I'm going home, I'm going to have a shower, and I'll see you later, all right? And because people do write dialogue like that. And a good test is just keep taking words away, take them away one at a time, so it still makes sense. So that gets rid of all the I ams and the everything else, all the things. And if you do that, what you end up with is later, and that's actually how people talk. I think you can learn craft, you can learn story structure, you can learn narrative drive, but if you can't write dialogue, you're kind of screwed.
Bad dialogue is like 90%, 95% of television, and most television dialogue is just really functional and talks about the plot and ping-pongs. It's like you're absolutely in trouble when people are actually, this sounds weird, but when they're actually talking to each other. Where they go, what are you doing here? I'm doing this. Why? Oh, because I did this. Oh, who said so? He did. Why? That's just rubbish. That's just explaining the plot. It's just filling 2 pages, actually. I saw a drama once that I won't name, but its opening line of dialogue was, happy wedding day, sis. Like, oh, wedding, sister, right, got it. It's like, ouch, and who calls their sister sis? It's like, you know, it doesn't exist, and you shouldn't write like that. You're giving up all responsibility if you, you know, it's like you are faced with those scenes where you've got to say that someone's their father or someone's brother to this character. And you must not write dialogue that says, well, you would say that being my brother. You know, that's so often you hear that on telly, and you're just doing a bad job if you're doing that. And I know why people do it, because they're sitting there going, how can I explain this is the brother? You've just got to write it better. Or you've just got, there's a great phrase that Jimmy McGovern uses, that he says, I would rather be confused for 10 minutes than bored for 5 seconds. In good dialogue, they're not really listening to each other. It's like that great phrase, which is that the opposite of listening is waiting. Because you're just waiting to say your next thing. And that's everyone in life all the time. People hardly ever listen to each other. It's like when you're writing dialogue, it's actually 2 monologues that just connect sometimes. A good dialogue just bristles and sounds like 2 people in a room instead of a page of dialogue going chunk, 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 like that. I don't know, I think. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that makes perfect sense. I wasn't listening, obviously. I was thinking of my next question. Whatever, yeah, that made sense.
Where do you want to start?
The inside's bigger than the outside?
Yes.
It's alien.
Yeah.
Are you alien?
Yes. Is that all right?
Yeah.
It's called the TARDIS, this thing. TARDIS. That's time and relative dimension in space.
And sometimes there are really functional things like plot exposition, especially something like Doctor Who, where it has to be more functional than anything else. We've got to say, this computer has this function, it does that. But then you just get that over with. Then you've got the Doctor to just come in and say those things.
Get it open.
What's wrong with your sonic screwdriver?
Nothing. Sonic Blaster, 51st century. Weapon factories of Villengard.
You've been to the factories?
Once.
Well, they're gone now, destroyed. Main reactor went critical, vaporized the lot.
Like I said, once. There's a banana grove there now. I like bananas. Bananas are good.
I remember when I was trying to write Dead Set, weirdly I looked at a script for Ultimate Force, which was the Ross Kemp SAS, and I was really impressed with the stage directions, which were
Action. How hard is action to write? It's really hard.
So how much attention do you pay to stage directions?
Tons, absolutely tons. It's as important as the dialogue. It's because what you're doing is getting it across to the director, who will then get it across to the audience. So you've got to be so precise with it and not lengthy. There's nothing where it's like in a novel. You know when you turn a page of a novel and there's no paragraph break, you go, oh, shut up. Paragraphs are good, and it's the same on a script. It's like the more things, if there's a great big chunk, oh, you're bored already. It's like I literally describe characters with 3 adjectives. It's like if Stan walks in the room, I say he's 45, fat, angry. And you've got him. You know, is that there? You've got him. And then you can elaborate from that. There's more to say about Stan, but it's like, you don't need, the script is there to explain the rest to you. And a bad script goes, he was brought up here, he's the sort of man who never takes fools gladly. Everyone always says that. And it's like all those, it's like, but way beyond character descriptions, it's like, if it's a chase sequence, the words you use should be exciting. And I use less full stops. I use dashes then. I start a sentence with a dash. If it's a chase, and the Doctor's running. You start with an and then you do a line break, and so the door blows open. So it feels as fast and as exciting as, big blocks of prose aren't exciting.
And stage direction should represent the dynamic you need to get from one place or another. I mean, if somebody's got to answer the door, you have to write that. Learning how to edit stage directions teaches you how to use dialogue efficiently.
Often sort of new writers don't bear in mind how much something's going to cost, and so they'll sort of write in, I don't know, a scene on a spaceship or something willy-nilly. I mean, because you've got all this experience, to what extent are you bearing in mind the practicalities of actually shooting the thing while you're writing it?
I think you try and write with 2 heads on in that regard, that you're like, oh, let's totally disregard that, whatever's funniest. But you're always going, look, don't put it on a fucking aircraft carrier, because that's just not going to happen, so...
And it's also, sometimes it's more like pity for the actors. You don't want to dump David Mitchell in a freezing lake in the middle of December, because everyone's going to be unhappy, especially him.
I think, actually, that sort of stuff it's almost a shame, because I think one does become quite aware of that, of the physical endurance aspect, which is quite great for performers. And it's probably not to the advantage of the comedy, but...
Shove him in the freezing lake. Exactly. He deserves it.
When you're writing, to what extent are you writing for a particular audience or a particular viewer?
I know, because you see, it's my job as a writer to sit here and say, you're just there to be the writer and to tell the story and to serve the story, and every single writer has to give that response. And I'm now in the really weird position of having written something with Doctor Who, where I really, really thought about the audience. So I knew it's a big, public, expensive show. So I really, really aimed it at women, aimed it at children, aimed it at men, aimed it at all those demographics, and it's the most successful thing I've done. So that's a nightmare. It fucks every writing theory in my head. It's a very focus-grouped show, Doctor Who. It was invented from a focus group in 1963. It was planned by a committee full of people to fill the gap after Grandstand and Jukebox Jury. It was a focus group invented show. Honestly.
That goes against everything I believe about focus groups.
I know, and it's the longest running drama in the country. It's just weird. It's wrong, isn't it? It just defies all the rules, Doctor Who. And now I find myself in that position of it breaking all my rules, and it's clearly working, and that's wrong.
How long does it take you to write an episode?
It takes about a month.
Aggregated out, because we do it in these weird bits, like we do a month of doing all our stories, and then at the end we're doing lots of rewrites, But the whole process takes 6 months, usually, for us to write 6 episodes.
I've written them in 4 days in my time, and normally I'd say about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But that's just the typing. It's like the thinking has gone on for years.
I think the last one was about 3 years. But State of Play, episode 3, I wrote in 3 days. Episode 4 took me 7 weeks because it had a bigger job to do.
I try and do office hours, which never work. And basically what happens is that I learned quite early on that I can write quickly. So I used to write an episode of EastEnders sometimes overnight. In fact, I went back to do an episode last year, which was a one-off. I said I'd never go back and do it anymore, but it sounded like a great way to sign out, which was the first soap monologue, which I did with June Brown, Dot Cotton. And I went into the office at, I think, about 6:30 in the evening, bottle of Bacardi, bottle of Coke, ice bucket, 40 fags, and woke up about 4 in the morning on the keypad. I actually had all the letters printed on my cheek, with my wife Tracy tapping me on the shoulder with a bacon sarnie and a mug of tea. And I looked up and I'd been crying and sobbing, fag ash and snot everywhere, and I'd written Fade Out. And I thought, oh fuck, I've finished.
I think this is something that a lot of viewers probably don't realise, is that you might suddenly have to change something for some unforeseen reason. I mean, how often does that happen, and how do you deal with it?
All the time. I was rewriting Torture this morning before I came here because they'd fallen behind schedule. One scene had been dropped. I looked at it and realised you could compress that scene into another scene that's been filmed in next week sometime. So all the time you're always on standby to do that sort of thing. Actors disappear or drop dead, but most of the time, though, you're rewriting is because the script doesn't work. To be honest, that's the greatest part of rewriting, is just finding it. You know, even if you've got 60 pages, you haven't sort of quite found what you meant, and sometimes you have brilliant stuff in there that it takes someone else to point out and say, that character's really interesting, he should be at the centre of it. And sometimes you've written shit and that just needs to be cut out.
I think the first draft is always a drudge, and I wish there were elves. You could just, you know, kind of lay down the canvas and stuff like that. Well, they can't. You have to do it, and you have to bleed.
See, the thing about writing is the first draft is so hard that once you've finished it, you don't want to change anything, because you think, that was so hard, I don't want to ever do it again. And the truth is, you know, and what people don't realise is that the difficulty of that first draft, it's only for the first draft. The second draft will become easier, and the third draft easier still, and by the fourth draft you'll be having such a good time, because by that stage you'll have stripped away all the dead wood, and you'll be adding in all these wonderful new jokes, and the structural work, and everything will suggest something else. Like the first draft of The Work Outing, which had all the characters going to a gay musical, the first draft wasn't about what it turned out to be about at all. It was about Moss seeing this guy who worked in the toilets, who turned out to be a bully who bullied him at school. But the whole reason that story existed, suddenly I chucked out, and then it came alive. I love